were floods, albeit minor ones, but it was only when heavy rain combined with the strength of the lunar nodes a couple of months later that the real damage was inflicted in the U.S. in October. South Carolina saw flash flooding that caused property damage and people having to be rescued by emergency services. At the end of December 2015, the UK was hit by some of the worst floods it had seen in a century. Combined with the power of storm, Desmond flooding and storm damage caused an estimated £1.3 billion in damages. These floods can be highly damaging, but that in and of itself doesn't completely explain NASA's worry for the upcoming alignment in mid-2030. There is an extra element of play beyond the regular rhythm of this rising flood risk we have been seeing through the course of human history. Unfortunately, the next node's alignment with the Sun promises to be particularly devastating. The danger is that this phenomenon is combined with an already strained system. Even more strained than it was in 2015, climate change has resulted in steadily rising sea levels when the next node aligns with the Sun in the mid-2030s. This will likely lead to a dramatic increase of floods on planet Earth. Worryingly, a new study led by NASA's Sea Level Change Science Team predicts that almost all U.S. mainline coastlines, Hawaii and Guam, will have a huge leap in flood numbers. When this happens, some predictions claim this node alignment could cause 4 times the amount of flooding from one decade to the next, which will damage infrastructure and change our coastlines around the world. This means human life will inevitably be affected by these floods, now impacting shelter, clean water supplies, electricity, as well as the increased risk of waterborne disease outbreaks like hepatitis A and Chera. Plus, the receding floodwater can create stagnant pools of water where mosquitoes gather, which can spread other diseases like malaria. This has a knock-on effect on economic issues, as these natural events can make coastal life unaffordable with increased cost of insurance on these homes, or an inability to find insurance at all, which could cause a reduction in asset value in the community. Consequently, this lunar nodal cycle will damage the quality of life in coastal communities where infrastructure may not be rebuilt or adapted to this force of nature. It's not just bad for humans. Ilya Rashin, a visiting professor at Rutgers University, analyzed that the peak of the lunar wobble, where high tides are higher, can drown salt marshes. Salt marshes are a habitat for a range of species, such as invertebrates, and these floods can cause these creatures to drown, which means that other species like fish, seabirds, and others who rely on invertebrates to survive also suffer. And they aren't the only ones that rely on salt marshes, as salt marshes hold a multitude of marine life, which includes 75% of all fishery species. This means that the lunar wobble impacts the food chains of humans and animals, causing disturbances to their natural habitat and impacting their populations. While this all does seem fairly doom and gloom, it's interesting to note that not all ecosystems on the planet are negatively affected by flooding, and high tides ecologist Neil Salen of Marari University analyzed that the lunar nodal cycle impacts heavily on the expansion and contraction of mangrove canopy cover over most of the Australian continent. The analysis show that the peaks of the lunar nodal cycle coincided with the cover of the mangrove canopy. It showed that when the lunar wobble is at its minimum phase, it causes the mangrove ecosystems to become very dry, which leads to thinner canopy cover. Yet when lunar wobble is at its maximum phase, mangrove cover increases. Mangrove canopies are beneficial to Earth's environment as they are complex ecosystems that fight against climate change, protect wildlife, and shield coastlines. They can also absorb 4 times as much carbon dioxide than rainforests of the same size. Their growth is vital to the welfare of our planet. So it's not all downside. Still, it's clear that if we don't plan ahead, coastal cities and environments will face a serious crisis. Your important question then is, what can we do about it? One method is better protection. As mentioned previously, the protection and restoration of mangroves can act as a shield against flooding, as they can mitigate the vulnerability of communities on the coastlines. More specifically, mangroves can avert damage by decreasing the height and energy of waves as they pass through mangrove forests. The above-ground roots and branches diminish the height of the waves, and thus the waves lose energy, ultimately stopping the waves emerging onto the seabed and engulfing the sediments. The mangrove's roots and branches also reduce wind energy, which can stop the formation of waves, according to reports densely packed. Mangroves can halve the height of a wave through just a 100-meter passage. For comparison, in an open forest, where roots and branches are more sparse, it would take 500 meters for a wave to half its height. So preservation and reforestation of these mangroves or plants with a similar capability can become a great shield against upcoming floods. Another possible solution is to learn how to live with these flood-heavy conditions, working with nature rather than against it. For example, let's take a look at the flood defenses in the Netherlands, where 1/3 of the country is below sea level and another third is at risk of flooding. They've built infrastructure that works with water and manages the rising sea levels. They do this by designing facilities like powers. Powers are bits of land below sea level that have been reasserted from a body of water. It's always fully or partially surrounded by an embankment to keep the water out that comes from either the sea or a river. These powers offer a network of drainage canals